In a city park smack in the middle of the town of John Day, it stands as a remnant from the 1880s. It is the only remaining piece of what was once the third largest Chinatown in the United States. The immigrants from China worked as gold prospectors, miners, and railroad workers. This building was the focal point for the 2,000 Chinese living in John Day in the 1880s. Kam Wah Chung translates to Golden Chinese Outpost,
which was a store, post office, an apothecary or doctor's office, a business center, and the social religious center for the Chinese community going as far back as 1871. It was also the residence of two Chinese gentlemen by the name of Lung An, who was the businessman, and Ng Dak K, and he was the traditional Chinese medicine doctor.
The two men owned and operated Kam Wah Chung for decades. They won the respect of John Day residents at a time when Chinese immigrants in the West bore the brunt of scorn and discrimination in many forms.
The businessman Lung An, he could speak and write English very well. He was the go-between the Chinese and the non-Chinese. So he was the mover, shaker, kind of got things together. But kind of what really gelled it was Dak He, Ng He. He was the Chinese medicine doctor, and for the most part, when the Chinese community was here, he treated the Chinese.
It seems when John Day residents got sick, they often first went to a local white doctor, and if they got no relief, they'd head down to Chinatown to see Dak He.
As a last resort, a lot of them came to Dak He. Well, he says, well, basically in his broken English, he says, if you trust me, I can probably heal you. And more often than not, they were actually cured of whatever was ailing them. It may take a little longer, but it worked.
Lung An and Dak He lived and worked and prospered here from the 1880s to the 1940s. An passed away in 1940, and in 1948, Dak He suffered an injury he himself could not fix.
When he fell and broke his hip, he had to be taken to Portland. He locked the doors, locked the windows, expected to be back in a few weeks, which he never did, and he passed away in 1952.
And for 20 years, Kam Wah Chung was closed up tight as a drum and untouched by a living soul. Everything left in place, as if Dak He might just walk back through that door. More than 2 decades pass, and the city of John Day realizes it now owns the building. Their plan was to knock the place down and put up a parking lot, literally. But a local historian suggested they just take a look inside before demolishing Kam Wah Chung. Just imagine that moment when in 1968 they cracked open the door and found this.
It was literally a time capsule.
And everything was left in here?
Everything is left just like you see it now. Everything you see is still in its place since 1948. So this is the apothecary. That was kind of Dak He's office. The main room that we're standing in right now was his waiting room during the day. And he would have people sit in that red chair and he would do what they call pulsology. Check his pulse and figure out what was wrong with you. Go in the apothecary and pick some of the 560 different ingredients that we have back here. In this section, this was Lung An's domain. This was his general store. And when the Chinese community was here, had a lot more Chinese goods. After the Chinese left, transitioned over to selling Western goods. So everything in that room there predates 1941. And in the back corner, there is a stock room that still has crates and boxes filled with different varieties. There's even a couple back there that are not marked and never been opened. Into the next room, that is what I call the bed and breakfast of Kam Wah Chung, because that is the kitchen area and bunk space. And Dak He and Lung An would fix meals to all the Chinese immigrants when they first arrived in the town back during those days. And they would also provide lodging to all the Chinese immigrants. Later on, when Dak He became popular, he used the beds for his patients if they needed it. We have a major shrine in the back general store, and that one was actually used as the temple for the Chinese after the one that was in Chinatown burned down or got destroyed.
We're used to visiting historical exhibits that are arranged with props and decorations to look old. I had to keep reminding myself that everything you see here, everything is legit. Yes, it is like a time capsule, and one worth visiting. In the heart of John Day with cinematographer Cody Rialt, this is Dave Jones for Destination Oregon.